Welcome to the chapter 9, section 2 podcast, and this is on the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. And we're th- going back a second. This can be get this chapter can section can have a lot of nitty gritty detail. And we're going to try to just go through the highlights, so remember some of the more important parts as opposed to getting bogged down in the details of the Krebs cycle and the electron transport. So, first thing we need to know, we've got to remember, is that when we left off in the last section, we were done with glycolysis, and in order for cellular respiration to occur fully, you need oxygen there. And when we have a pathway with oxygen, we say that it's aerobic if it has the oxygen. So now, what do we do with the pyruvic acid that we made? What we're going to do is send it to the Krebs cycle, which is the second stage of cellular respiration. What's going to happen with the Krebs cycle is it's going to break the pyruvic acid down into carbon dioxide in a series of energy extracting reactions. And once again, remember that carbon dioxide is a waste product of respiration. So here's the Krebs cycle right here, this circular part. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the pyruvic acid that's produced during glycolysis, and it's going to go inside the mitochondria, and that's this bean-shaped object right here. So the pyruvic acid enters the mitochondria, and then once it's entered, we remove electrons from it. If you remember from photosynthesis, we remembered that we removed electrons during the electrons removed were the energy. So the first thing that happens in the Krebs cycle is we remove some high energy electrons, and we're changing an electron carrier from NAD plus to NADH. And this NADH molecule has high energy now. It's once again that charged battery analogy. And as you can see, we made carbon dioxide there. Then we form another molecule called acetyl-CoA, and from there the acetyl-CoA is then formed into a 4-carbon compound called citric acid. Now don't sweat acetyl-CoA or coenzyme A, don't worry about those. What we're more interested in is the fact that we're extracting these, we've extracted some high energy electrons, and we've created something called citric acid. And sometimes the Krebs cycle is called the citric acid cycle because you make it. And don't sweat these 5-carbon, 4-carbon compounds too much. It's just showing that we have a cycle. Now, as a result of this, we are creating more CO2 by taking 6-carbon citric acid into 5-carbon product, and then a 5-carbon product into a 4-carbon compound, and we make more carbon dioxide. But the real important thing is we get electrons here and here and here and here, and now we have all these high energy electrons, and we're going to need to do something like that. And we also get one more molecule of ATP right there. So as a result of this, we end up with 4 NADH, 1 FADH2, and 1 ATP from one molecule of pyruvic acid. So now here's the important thing. What does the cell do with all these high energy electrons in the carriers like NADH? And this is where you can really create a lot of ATP if you have oxygen. We do this in the electron transport chain. It uses the high energy electrons from the Krebs cycle to convert ADP into ATP. And without going into too much detail, the electrons are passed along a chain from one carrier protein to another, and what they do there is they can create water as a result of it. And if you remember, we end up with water being a waste product of cellular respiration. But what happens as a result of this is we end up putting high energy hydrogen ions, remember protons, across the membrane. And as you might be able to guess, these protons build up into the intermembrane space, and now we have we have a lot of protons on this side, and we don't have much charge on this side. And what the protons are going to want to do is get across this gradient again. And guess what they're going to go through? ATP synthase, just like we saw in photosynthesis. And they end up going through the ATP synthase, which causes the ATP synthase to turn. And as a result of that, it'll change ADP. Here's a typo right here. This is a typo right there. That should say ADP right there. That's a typo. Into ATP. And we have a lot of high energy electrons, and each one can produce 3 molecules of ATP. So let's go through the totals, and this is important. Glycolysis produces just 2 ATP molecules during glycolysis. But if you continue on to cellular respiration with oxygen, which is the Krebs cycle followed by the electron transport chain, you end up creating a total of 36 molecules of ATP. So you can see that you really do want to go through aerobic cellular respiration to get the most out of your molecule of glucose. And here are the totals here. Here's glycolysis, and you can see we create a net total of 2 ATP as a result of glycolysis. And then if you add up all the totals from the Krebs cycle and from the electron transport chain, as a result, we end up making a total of 36 ATP, and that's an important number to remember. It's important to remember that we make a total of 2 ATP through glycolysis, and that we end up making a total of 36 if you add up all the molecules of ATP we made from glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. Now, this is also important. This is photosynthesis here, and here's cellular respiration. And if you look, I alluded to this earlier, if you look, you'll see that they're basically the opposite reactions. Here's carbon dioxide plus water, and if you add a little sunlight in, you end up with glucose and oxygen as a waste product. Now, cellular respiration, and which occurs in all organisms that use oxygen for aerobic respiration, you end up using 6O2, using the glucose molecule. You get out of it energy in the form of ATP, 36 ATP, and you end up with 6 carbon dioxide and 6 water as a waste product, which you saw in the processes of the electron transport chain of the Krebs cycle earlier. So these are photosynthesis and cellular respiration are opposites. Photosynthesis removes carbon dioxide, cellular respiration puts it back. Photosynthesis releases oxygen, and whereas cellular respiration uses oxygen.